Hello everyone, Rob Wilkinson from Crowd with us here, and I'm joined today by my very good friend Thomas Knust. Thomas and I met quite a few years ago now on an NLP course, and we learned all of our innermost darkest secrets in a couple of weeks together and became very good friends. So Thomas, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself? You grew up in South Africa?
Yes, born and bred in South Africa, left for a few years to go sailing around the world a bit.
And that was your father built the world's first concrete-hulled sailing boat?
Yeah, he was one of the first few pioneers building cement boats
in the garden.
In the garden. So he would invite all his work colleagues around for barbecue. Before they could eat, they had to slap cement on the boat in the back garden first. So that's how that one got built. So I went travelling with him at 19, 18, and then spent...
Tell us about your first night on watch.
Yes, so he left me on watch about 10 p.m. and went to bed. I had a couple of little slippers with me, so I fell asleep by, I would say, about 11 o'clock. And then he came out at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there were at least 4 ships about to bear down on us. So he was not very happy.
Okay. But that was the only near miss you had?
No, quite a few more, but that was the worst one.
Okay, you learned from that.
Luckily the wind was going the wrong way, otherwise he would have turned the boat around and dropped me off.
Yeah.
If he'd had his way, yes.
Okay, and you went straight across the Atlantic?
Yes, St. Helena, then to Rio de Janeiro, and then all the usual islands in between Bermuda and so on, and a 1 year sailing across the Atlantic and the seas. So I came in quite useful for them because I could do all the night shifts. So I had to do double shift from 9 to 12 and from 3 to 7 in the morning.
Okay.
So,
but you enjoyed it. You learned a lot from it.
Yes, I learned a lot from it. Yes. You get very bored, so you have to spend a lot of time reading. So I did a lot of reading.
Okay. And then after that?
Yeah, then I stayed in Germany for 2-3 years. Of course, the Germans, they think they're quite clever. So you have to do an extra year schooling because all of us from outside of Germany haven't done enough schooling. So I had to do another 1 year. And that's where I was forced to learn German. So I was forced kicking and screaming to learn German. So I finally learned to speak German.
Okay. And your parents are both German?
They are originally German.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was nice there for a while. And then I decided to go back to South Africa. Spent a few years back there. Finished my degree in economics.
Okay.
And then eventually came back to London. 2000.
But in between, you had a few businesses. You've always been quite entrepreneurial. That's right, isn't it?
Yes. After university, started a short-term job, and then we ran an advertising agency from home, and then started a ceramics pottery factory. So tried to give those a go.
And what did you? Something to do with organising concerts?
Oh yes. Yes, there was a famous musician in the South African field who, we tried to arrange concerts for them, more in the township areas, and so they went slightly wrong. So we had to sort of extricate ourselves the first time, and then we tried it again.
You were held at gunpoint?
Yes, sort of gunpoint. So we had to sort of just find our way out of the situation.
But as if that wasn't enough, you decided to have another go.
We decided to have another go, and so it happened all over again.
And then you decided that was enough.
That was enough.
No third time lucky. Okay. So then you came back to the UK? Then you came to the UK. What happened then?
Well, then I came to UK. I was working then. I decided to go for a temporary job just to save a bit of money. So yes, I came here for a week's holiday with my £100, and then got a job on the very first day. Started in the warehouse just to get my feet here.
What were you doing?
Well, forklift driving in a warehouse.
Oh, okay.
Dell computer warehouse.
Okay.
So, which was earning a lot of money actually.
Yeah.
Was earning good money. So just for 6 months until I could get myself sorted and start into a finance job.
So you came for a week's holiday, but never went home.
No, I gave notice on the 5th day when I had a job.
Okay.
So I phoned back and said, look, I'm not coming back. It's what you do. If you haven't got enough money, you have to see if you can get a job first. So then, so after 6 months, I then got into a finance job. Yes, and then with Shell, worked with Shell for a while. And so that's been finance job for 15 years after that.
So that you ended up in corporate accountancy, or?
Corporate accountancy, started with Shell and then just worked my way up the accounting experience ladder. And then eventually got tired of it.
So how did you transition into property? What was your property journey?
Yes, well, I started to do it the cautious way. So I started doing property part-time alongside my full-time job, which is what a lot of people try and do. And so it really took 3-4 years before I could really get onto the property doing it full-time. It's quite impressive how much work you can do part-time. If you want to start a business part-time, you can get quite a lot going in the beginning to start it off.
But you joined a mastermind group. Is that how your foray into it? That's how you got into it in the first place?
Yes.
Or had you already bought a few properties before then?
I had bought 3 or 4 buy-to-lets by then, slowly but surely. And then, then I went to the property shows. And so I joined Simon Zutzi's mastermind group, which is really what kick-started everything off. It's a 1-year course, but it just effectively teaches you the mindset. So that's what I really got out of it. The mindset that this is what you can do, and it's not really about the knowledge. You can pick up the knowledge, but to learn the mindset is important.
And Tor Portes, obviously my business partner, was on the same course as you, and that's how
he was 1 year ahead of me.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but in the same group just the year before. So you tend to mix quite often at the weekly and monthly events and so on.
Okay.
So that was a very good course for me. Yes, and since then I still have contact with quite a few people in that group. More than 10 years, 9 years later. So, and then of course we went to the NLP course.
Yeah, which is where we met. And literally crying on each other's shoulders.
Yeah, that was a tough 12 days, wasn't it? We did 2 weeks at one go, 12 hours a day.
Yes.
Really hard work.
Certainly was.
Quite glad to get that one over, weren't we? So,
but off the back of that, we obviously became very good friends, and that's how we started doing a few deals together.
Yes. So shortly after that, we started really escalating involvement in the projects. Started scaling up a little bit.
So tell us about your transition from buy-to-let properties to larger projects. How did that happen? Was Nottingham the first one?
Yeah, we started in the beginning doing lease options, 1 or 2 below market value discounted projects. You have to start with the small one just to get the confidence up, so you get used to buying things. And then we started, I joined another 2 or 3 others. We each put some money in a pot, and then we started doing slightly bigger projects. So refurb projects in London, buying a house, converting to 3 flats. The usual, starting to slowly scale up, and then bought a building, converted it to 8 flats, slowly build it up. And then,
as I say, were all of them good projects, or were you learning as you went along? Did you make any mistakes?
Well, we didn't really lose anything along the way in those small ones, but some of them, after you kept them for a long time, they didn't really go up too much in value, so they weren't really worthwhile. It was still a useful exercise to go through, so you understand the process and how it works. We still own those ones now as well, so it's not a big loss. but that had to be learned in order for us to progress to the bigger projects. So then when the bigger project came along, which was the first student one, that was straight away, need £500,000, scaled up quite quickly to the bigger one.
So tell us about that project. How did you find it, and what was the process? That's your first project.
Yeah, so my current two partners, we started that together, and really we had to buy something for £500,000, office building.
Just permitted development.
It wasn't permitted development at the time. We didn't really look at it that way. They had planning for office, so but we changed it to student planning, and then we were going to build it out. So that took a delayed exchange completion, and you actually helped me raise most of the funding for that as well. So in the end, we did end up just completing and selling with planning to another end user buyer who were going to build it out.
So I remember at the time we'd gone from smaller projects, single buy-to-lets, you'd only 8 flats, and this was jumping right in the deep end to 130 unit student building.
This was a 128 bed student building, and we had no idea what we were doing, of course. And so yes, we just bumbled our way through that. At that time, we were nervous about oversupply in the student market, and we thought, oh no, we'll never get it sold. The student market is saturated. So that was.
And that was back in
2012.
Yeah.
So 6 years ago, we thought it was saturated. So look where we are now.
Yeah.
You never know, do you?
And so you flipped that on from memory to a pension fund, or how?
No, it was another company that were going to build it out and then rent it out themselves. So we need to catch up with them and see how they got on, actually, have a look. So we sold it to them for about 1.1. So it was a nice little turnaround for us. And really, 3 months later, we had to get stuck into the next lot. So we had to do 4 at one go.
So tell us about that.
There were 4 different projects. It came across the line. They said, if you want them, you have to do all 4. So we had a discussion. Me being the accountant, I said, no way, it's too much. The other said, oh, don't be such a sissy, let's get on with it. So we had to raise quite a bit of money in about 2 months. We had to raise
I remember.
Yes, quite a lot of panicking going on. But so we had to raise about £2 to £3 million of funding just to get those across the line. So that was quite an experience to get all 4 projects across the line at the same time.
But they were all student projects?
No, 2 were residential, 2 were students. So it was a bit of a mix, really.
And what sort of rough size?
Well, the purchase price of those was probably about 1 million each, 800 to £1 million each, about £4 million worth of land purchase or building purchase properties. The GDV now is about 3 and 4. It's about 25 million now. So we still have those at the moment. So that was 2013 when we started that. Really exchanged in the 2013. So it's been 5 years to get them all across the line.
Was one of them Dover Street?
Yes, one of them was Dover Street.
Tell us about Dover Street, because I think that's your most impressive.
Yeah, Dover Street was a quick one, because we heard about it coming up at auction, and so about 3 days before the auction, so I got a phone call from one of the others said, listen, can you just raise the money by Friday?
But just so anyone listening knows, this was a car park.
It was an empty land car park.
With no planning?
No planning or anything. Been derelict for quite a while. So we made a few phone calls, we raised money from you and a couple of the others. So we got 300,000 together to go to auction, and we bought it at auction. So that was a nice buy. It was a buy at the right price. But we had a lot of issues with that site. We had ransom strips and all kinds of things going on there, and then caves in the bottom, all these things that happen when you think you're buying a cheap piece of land, but you don't know what's really involved. especially at auctions. But no, there weren't any major problems as such.
And you've turned it into how many units?
That's a 135 bed student development now.
With a GDV of
10 million at the moment.
So that's not bad return, is it? You're 300 grand into.
Yes, not too bad. But yes, I mean, by the time we finished it all, because it took quite long, we spent a bit more on finance fees and so on than we should have.
But you got it at the right price.
Yes, yes, it was bought at the right price, so then it doesn't matter taking our time, because we were going to go for a much bigger scheme with the neighbours and lots of negotiations, and that cost us nearly 2 years. It would have been a much bigger scheme otherwise. So it's one of those things, you can't always have everything you want. So that one's effectively sold now, so we can put that one to bed now.
And I think we spoke earlier on, because you do all the accounts for the company, you've currently got 52 SPVs.
Yes, unfortunately, with all these tax structures and VAT structures, you have to create all these companies to make it all work. And it creates extra burden on us to have to do accounts, year-end accounts, and back returns, and so on. So it's a bit of work.
Mm-hmm.
I try and keep it down to 2 days a week for admin work. Any more than that, and I get a bit fed up. So
in 8 days a month, you do all the accounts for 52 SPVs. I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, these things, you just need to find a fast way to do it. The quicker you do it, the better, isn't it? Admin work, I never did like it much. So, with the bookkeeping myself, we keep that under control. And then the rest of the time, you focus on all the other things. So yes, ideally we don't want to do any more companies, because you have to do 3-4 a month, so once a week you have to do a tax return. At the best of time, most people only want to do one a year, really. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's not the most enjoyable part.
But your knowledge of the tax system must be quite good then, I guess, in that case.
Well, keep it simple, so I don't know.
But I think one of the most impressive things about the way that you guys have structured your business is the fact that you have hardly any overheads. So you all work from home, or one of the developments that you're actually doing. You don't have a website.
No, because we've got quite a lot on, and we knew we weren't going to make money very quickly. So the first 2 years or so, we knew we had to rely on ourselves. So yes, I'm glad we did that, because then we don't have any cash flow issues with overheads and rent and so on. And I think it worked quite well for us, because most of the time we're on the telephone anyway, so we can get a lot done on the phone. But we've gotten into certain habits of how we work, which is 6 o'clock in the morning they'll start phoning you, nobody bothered about whether you're sleeping or not. If it's something urgent, we'll just. So it works that way, where we just expect to get a call at 9 o'clock at night, or Sunday or Saturday, it doesn't really matter. Because often you get a lot of productive work done in those sort of hours. You can't always stick to 9 to 5.
And how many sites do you have ongoing at any one time? How many builds?
Well, top of build, actual development project going through is normally 4 or 5 a year. And the rest of the time it's all pre-construction or post-construction. I think 4 years about the maximum.
And how many units would that be?
It would be about 100 to 150 units each, so 400 or 500 units at a time. The problem that we have is, being student, they all have to finish at the same time, which is the difficulty.
So it's always a bit hectic, August, September time.
Yeah, so we have to sort of split and separate, and if it was normal residential, then it doesn't really matter. You don't have that deadline, which would be a little bit easier. So yes, trying to keep the pace down a bit. So I'm always trying to slow the pace down, but the others
Like to speed it up.
They like to speed
So you
things
balance
up.
each other out.
Very much like yourself, you like to speed things up as well, don't you? Always keeping busy.
Yes.
So yes.
So tell us about your actual model, because I know we've spoken a lot about student-led, but we also do PRS. So let's talk a bit about that and how you've only done a few residential projects, so you've really focused on student, and and the PRS market?
Yes. The first thing is we don't actually have a company itself, so every project is a standalone project. We have a separate SPV for a project, and when we buy the site, we just have to do an appraisal pretty quickly ourselves and work out the numbers and make sure, okay, we're okay on that. And then as long as we're comfortable that we can get out of it without taking too much risk, then we normally sort of go for it, because sometimes we have to move quite quickly on it. And then we go into the details of whether
not how many people do it. They normally do the details beforehand, but because you have to move so fast.
Yes, so sometimes we just have to take a bit of a view of what we think will be there, and then we'll ask a few questions from the other people in the game. So listen, how did your project go in that area this year? Did you sell it for this amount? Did it work? What were the rentals? And we get a bit of a feel for it.
Just local estate agents?
No, just other developers.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't tend to ask the estate agent normally because we're never really sure what we're getting as feedback. So we're better off asking how other developers in the same game works a bit better, bit of feedback. So so then we really, we don't always know our exit strategy as such until further down the line, and create some models, and then sometimes we have to mix it up, students, PRS, and create the different models. So some of the projects we've had, we've gone completely based on existing planning, where we know there's some planning, so there's very little risk, but then we completely changed the drawings again from scratch. So one of our PRS sites beforehand was hotels and all kinds of things, and students and so on. Completely got changed over and made it a lot more effective. But again, a lot of these things, it's not as profitable as people think if you do things wrong. The margin isn't that huge, so you have to keep things in check.
Which is your expertise, this is where you come in, and the fact that you don't have any overheads with a big company behind you, that helps.
That helps a bit, yes. But again, we're also a bit slower because we've got a little bit too many projects probably, so we can't focus on 2 or 3 as fast as we could, so we could slow down a little bit, but it doesn't really matter because we don't really have overhead problems. So that's sort of worked out quite well for us. So we've sort of kept our head in the sand because we haven't really asked other people how they run their businesses and so on. People talk about marketing and having a brand and all that sort of thing. We haven't really interested us. So we're different to other companies in that sense.
So you've got about 220 million GDV at the minute. You've sold up some recently. So how a lot of the other companies, they have to have a brand and a profile in order to raise funds. So with your model, you've worked with a high net worth. So then that's what's enabled you to go and buy some new projects.
Not in the beginning. In the beginning, we're just ourselves, and so we had to really just put everything on the line. All our assets, PG, everything we had to go on the line initially. So initially it was difficult to convince them, yes, we are creditworthy and so on. But once you do the first 3 or 4, then it's a bit easier to get the finance across the line. And often we had to borrow the money and juggle here and there a little bit. And then later on we got slightly more high net worth investors to come on board to do the slightly bigger projects. But at the end of the day, the finance is really down to us who are delivering the project, and we have to do personal guarantee for everything anyway. So yes, so it does work. Sometimes it can be difficult if you don't have your own cash. Even when you're borrowing money, sometimes the banks don't like it when you get the money from elsewhere. They want you to have your own money. So that's one of the big hurdles as well you have to encounter. So yes, I think the worst part of our journey was having to borrow money to complete on projects. That was always tough because it always goes down to the last minute again, always. So it's always a bit tight near the end.
I think it's the same for most developers though.
Most have been going through the same process, isn't it? That's, I find the most stressful. The rest you can sort of manage. So yes, having your own money is much easier, right?
But everyone has to start from somewhere.
Yes, that's right. So that's why we got hold of you guys, and we can just phone you guys. You guys can raise the funds for us, so much easier.
Very good, very good. So earlier on, you mentioned that with the Nottingham project, you obviously flipped that on because you're a bit worried about the oversaturation of the student market. And now, when was that? 2012. So 6 years later, you're still in the student market. So what's your view of the student and the PRS markets at the minute?
Again, we don't spend too much time researching the market too much, and suddenly a bit too busy just trying to get our projects finished and across the line, so we're really a bit insular. So I'm no expert on the market at all. It just seems that recently student markets have come into their own as an asset class. So it's a very well recognized asset class now. So all the funds are a lot more interested in it. I think it's only really the last year or two that's really become an asset class. So in that sense, because we've got so many funds out there who need to have an income, have a yield, student markets seem to be working quite well for that. And PRS the same.
You can forward buy a lot then.
You can do forward funding on them if you're lucky. It doesn't always work. So some people manage to get away with it. Yes, up to now with our student stuff, we've never actually forward funded anything. So we've had to build it all ourselves first, and then prove the income model first. But certainly the student market seems to be quite stable now. There's quite a few people out there looking to buy, so it seems to be okay, looking quite good. So far so good. PRS seems to be certainly on the up. More and more people are looking at buying PRS, build to rent. So that's looking quite good as an asset class as well. Again, I don't spend too much time on that, on research. But from what we can hear and see, it seems to be quite stable. We've had no problem selling our stuff, so it's always good.
So what does a typical day in the life of Thomas Knust look like?
Well,
You can use
yes, I'll have to, because my partners realise I'm having a 1 hour lunchtime students that won't go down well. Sometimes we'll start at 7:30, 8:30 in the morning, depends on what kind of a busy day it is. I'll just start work at home, normally work till 1:30, an hour break, and then work until 6:30 or so if I'm working from home. And that's quite a relaxed day from home, just focus on admin and phone calls. And then 2 days a week I go to my bookkeeper's place. We spend intensive work doing tax returns, that's hard work. And then the rest of the time I'm either going to site, worrying about sorting out maintenance issues, or on-site meetings, or on-site sorting out various things. So it's quite a nice mix. And again, you just have to plan your day depending on what comes up next. Often you get pulled out to meetings in London or something. So the trick is to avoid the meetings wherever possible, cancel them. Because every time you go to a meeting, it does cost you a lot of time.
sorry about that.
Every now and again I get tempted. But you have to learn to say no as much as possible. We have a lot of work to do.
Exactly.
So but it's good to, when it's intensive admin work, you have to have a bit of a break in a day, and you can't do it 4 days in a row. It gets a bit much.
One of the things I will say about you is I think you're very good at, if somebody asks you for something, you're very quick in coming back, and I guess you do that throughout your whole business, and I think that's why you guys have been able to scale so quickly, because you seem to be able to, something comes in and you just go for it and it's done.
Yeah, because we've got a bookkeeper and a PA, and they're very good as a team. There's 2 PAs and a bookkeeper and 3 of us basically, all subcontracted part-time. But we have a good system on Dropbox, so everything is documented well, so when we need to access information we can get to it quite quickly. So we do take extra care filing our spreadsheets properly so everyone knows where they are, because often you need the information really quickly and we all need to know exactly where to get it. So that's taken 3-4 years to get the system work perfect. But again, we can do things very quickly. We can do an appraisal in 10 minutes and then we get back the decision 5 minutes later, so things can move really quickly.
Yeah, you literally do that. Some people will spend weeks analysing data and spreadsheets, and you'll come along and do an appraisal literally in 10 minutes, and then you bought it the next day.
Well, yeah, that's the advantage of being an accountant, because you have to do things really quickly. So it's just a bit easier being trained as an accountant, I suppose. Yes, so also all the practice we've had, for bank finance, for example, we know where to find the things, we know what they look for, so we can do things a little bit quicker.
So systemization is key there. So basically a cookie cutter model. So you're able to use the same systems and processes on each deal.
Yes, but we keep it really simple. It's just simple spreadsheet. We don't have complicated systems which take long to set up. So we really keep it simple. So if things change, and let's say we lose our PA or something, the new person can pick it up really quickly. So we try and keep it simple, and so hopefully it may continue this way. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be able to cope.
Very good. So someone who was looking to come into property or into property development as a newbie, what would you advise them? How would you tell them to make that journey or to get started?
I would recommend Mastermind course, because that really kickstarts it. I know it costs a lot of money, but it really kickstarts you, because you're held to account. So you have to have someone holding you to account once a month and say, these are the things you said you were going to do and you haven't done them. You look a bit silly, and that's quite a good incentive. I think that's the way to start, because it's difficult on your own. So that way you also build up good relations with other people who can help you on your journey. So I've always in the beginning done things together with other people. It makes it much easier to start. If you're completely on your own, it's difficult to start. I think that's the key, really. Try not to do everything on your own initially. And the second thing is, if you can find money, have some money first, or find someone who can help you start off. It's very difficult to do it when you have to borrow 100% of the money from someone else. And then again, a lot of deals come across that seem to look good, so you have to be really careful that you really are conservative. And I know it's very tempting. I did the same in the beginning. Oh, this deal looks okay.
Let's buy everything.
Let's get started, but really, I know Tor was very good at that. He'd say, no, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. So he was very good in that sense. And I always, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to listen to him. So I did 1 or 2 projects which weren't as profitable. Maybe thinking back now, I should have rather waited. The thing is, though, you've got to start somewhere. So the first 1 or 2, you're going to have to just dive in. But try and keep your reserve and be conservative. I know it's not easy. I remember very clearly when we started. Apart from that, it's not really much else to think about on that one, really.
Just get going, find good partners, and an accountability group that's got different skill bases that can all assist, and you can grow together. I guess that's the key.
Yeah, even if it's just 2 or 3 of you eventually going into, you don't want too many people. 3, I think, is about enough.
Because I remember once you left the Simon Zuch's mastermind, you basically started your own with Marco. That was the next. So and I think a number of them were from the same mastermind group, but
yes.
you left one and you created another. I guess you've done the same with your business. So everyone's got different skills.
Yes, and it's also you're not as scared doing it on your own. You take more risks, and you can, between the 3 of you, make sure you don't miss something, which is good.
So I was going to ask you what you read, or what podcasts you listen to, or magazines or internet sites to keep you up to date with the property market. But as I had to explain to you earlier on what a podcast was, you don't have to go at that. But any particular publications or magazines or anything that you read?
I did try in the beginning, 2-3 years ago, subscribe to Property Investor News and these magazines, and they would turn up.
And they're still sitting by the door,
They're still sitting there. I just don't seem to find time to read them at the moment. As soon as I'm up, it's got to get on with this. So I sort of don't spend much time reading at the moment, except to go to sleep. I'll try and read a magazine or a nice, good book. I'll try and start reading it. It has slowed down quite a lot lately.
I guess with 52 SPVs and tax returns, that's plenty of reading.
Yes, I find it difficult to really concentrate and enjoy a book. There's so much things. I need to learn to slow down a bit, slow down my brain a bit, and then you can enjoy reading again a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, it's a little bit too much going on. But yes, so I have not been too good at that lately. Got books sitting there. So
One day.
I'll get back onto it soon.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Thomas. It's been wonderful. I always enjoy listening to your stories and how you're getting on. I'm sure everyone else will. If someone wants to get hold of you, how they get in contact with you?
You can hook up with me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or just email me. You can pick it up on Facebook. So yes, no problem. Or phone me, no problem.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.